Hey everybody, it's Pax. Can you believe it's already halfway through October? Summer is gone in a flash, and that's saying something for someone who was stuck inside wearing a boot for a broken foot most of the summer. I went to the hospital the other day for a follow up. Some luck booking a doctor's appointment on Friday the 13th, let alone Friday the 13th in October. The break's all healed up, and I'm in the long process of the pain fading away over the next year or so. But in addition to that good news, Parallel Investigator was announced, Jim, and he was announced 17 days earlier than we were all expecting to hear. And then we also got confirmation that, no, he wasn't announced 17 days earlier than we were expecting to hear. He was supposed to be announced on Friday the 13th, and the October 30th teaser that we got a while ago still stands. So, hooray. Parallel Jim has the same stat line and health and sanity pool as his original card and gets an additional cursed trait. He has a reaction after you reveal one or more skull or curse tokens during a skill test you're performing. Replenish a charge on an asset you control. Limit once per round. He also gets a new Elder Sign that's +2, and you can choose to treat the token as if it were a skull or a curse token instead. So we're already off to a pretty good start. Charge replenishment is on the face of it pretty damn good, in my opinion. Compare this to Akachi's ability that makes her charges with cards start with one more when they enter play. Well, if you draw a single skull or curse token after you've begun using your charges, remember that since it's replenishment, you can't add more charges than the printed maximum uses, then you get as much value as Akachi, but not upfront, with the potential to get even more value. So this works really nicely with the cursed spell suite as well, to encourage using the curse token effects for the effects rather than the extra charge. Let's get the rest of the story on his flip side to make sure that, access to curse spells is a thing. His deck building has been revised to level 0 to 3 mystic cards, level 0 to 4 cursed cards, level 0 to 4 spell cards, level 0 to 5 neutral, and up to 5 other survivor level 0 cards. And he also has the Beyond added to his deck building requirements that we'll see shortly. He has a 10-card spirit deck consisting of 9 different ally assets from any class level 0 to 2, and the Vengeful Shade, which, again, we'll see shortly. We're given instructions to shuffle the spirit deck separately from his main deck and place it face down next to the Beyond. Jim can spend experience to upgrade cards in his spirit deck. Now, before moving on, I want to mention 2 things that aren't written plainly here. First, the spirit deck does not have a discard pile. Cards from the spirit deck get discarded to the bottom of the spirit deck. Second, I asked Duke about card limits between the 2 decks, and you're still limited to 2 copies of a card between your 2 decks. So if you include an Arcane Initiate in the spirit deck, you only get to take 1 Arcane Initiate in your main deck. The level 0 to 3 Mystic, level 0 to 4 Spell, and 5 level 0 Survivor cards is slightly more limited than Marie's deck building, but obviously the 0 to 4 Cursed cards is a substantial set of cards that will really change up what's going to be available for him to pick, and obviously is going to be expanded upon in the upcoming Hemlock Vale expansion, since the teaser article for that included the information that it will be including Blesses and Curses again. The Beyond is a new permanent signature asset for Jim. It says each attached spirit loses all printed traits and gains the Geist trait. When damage or horror would be placed on an attached spirit, it gets placed on Jim instead. Then it has Forced. When your turn begins, attach the top card of the spirit deck to the Beyond as a spirit. If 4 or more spirits are attached, flip this card and resolve its text. So this basically lets you get a bunch of allies for free, but you don't get to take advantage of how much health and sanity those cards would normally have. You do get to trigger enter play effects, like Lab Assistant or Medical Student. You do get static bonuses from Beat Cop and Field Agent, as well as their free triggered abilities, though you'd be taking the damage in horror instead of them. And you even get a bonus action from Leo DeLuca. This has a lot of potential for giving you a ton of extra value. So where's the downside? Well, remember, once we hit 4 spirits, we need to flip the card immediately. The Beyond's flip side has Forced. 1 at a time, choose a non-weakness spirit attached to the Beyond and reveal a random token from the bag. If it's an Elder Sign, you choose to either heal 1 horror or attach the top card of the spirit deck to the Beyond as a spirit. If it's an auto-fail, you discard the spirit and take a direct damage or horror of your choice. If it's a skull, you discard the spirit and heal a horror. If it's a cultist, tablet, elder thing, or curse token, you either discard the spirit or take a direct damage. And if it's any other token, you discard the spirit. Then you flip the card back over. So sure, loads of text going on. Basically, every time you attach the fourth spirit, you pull a token for each to see what combination of discarding the spirits and taking or healing damage and or horror you go through. So fine, sure. It's complicated, but it's interesting. And that seems like a somewhat reasonable compromise for getting all these allies for free, right? Not too bad? Well, enter the Vengeful Shade. The Vengeful Shade is a 5 fight, 2 health, 5 evade monster Geist enemy with Hunter and Prey Jim Culver only. You may fight or evade this enemy while it is attached to the Beyond as if it were engaged with you. If you succeed, discard it. If you fail, spawn it engaged with you. Then it has Forced when you attach a spirit to the Beyond via its Forced effect. Vengeful Spirit attacks you even if it is not at your location. It's not Vengeful Spirit, it's Vengeful Shade. Finally, Vengeful Shade deals 2 horror. So there's the limiting factor within the whole Spirit deck concept right there. If you don't deal with Vengeful Shade, you'll be taking 2 horror every turn, and also flipping the Beyond more often, since flipping only pulls tokens for the non-weakness spirits attached. Vengeful Shade will stay attached. So you're going to either want to crush this 5 fight or evade test when it pops up, or intentionally whiff it so that it enters play and can be dealt with using some non-test damage like Explosive Ward. Vengeful Shade is really reminiscent of Patrice's Watcher from the Beyond. Instead of effectively giving you a 20% hand size reduction every turn until you deal with it, and a 3 damage hit when your deck empties, you're tanking 2 horror every turn and filling up on spirits more often, making it a lot more urgent of a problem. But on the other hand, Patrice has to deal with Watcher purely by herself due to it being hidden and having peril. And she also gets a lot of cards every turn to be able to deal with it by herself. But Jim's friends at his location can help with the fight and evade tests. And frankly, they might even be able to help deal with it themselves depending on how you interpret the you in the ability of being able to fight or evade it while it's attached to the Beyond. I'm not sure about that one yet myself. Given Norman's Harbinger weakness that can be interacted with other players, I don't really know what the intent here is. But either way, you'll be able to get help from your friends, one way or another, which is a lot softer than the Watcher from Beyond. Now, unlike our last parallel investigator Ashcan Pete, Jim comes with a challenge scenario, and challenge scenarios mean advanced versions of signature cards, so let's see what the advancements are. Jim's Trumpet now triggers on revealing both skulls and curses during a skill test, but only when you're the person pulling it. The effect now heals every investigator and ally at Jim's location or a connecting location for 1 horror, instead of just 1 investigator at Jim's location or a connecting location. It also catches an additional wild icon for committing. So while it's a bit trickier to trigger the ability since it's only looking for when you pull the relevant tokens, adding curses to the list of relevant tokens means you can combo it with, like, Favor of the Moon for more reliability, and a much higher ceiling of guaranteed horror healing per trigger. Take, for instance, a team of investigators all using field agents to get clues. Apparently, they're all big 1920s jazz fans. However, with an advanced signature comes an advanced weakness. Final Rhapsody has only changed which tokens will trigger the damage in horror. In addition to skulls and autofails from the original, you will now also take damage and horror from cultists, tablets, elder things, curses, frost tokens, and any future symbol tokens that are not elder signs or blesses. So this is hitting harder than the original, undeniably, which it should for an advanced weakness. But like, by default, the numerical tokens have the highest density in the bag compared to the symbol tokens, unless you're playing on an extremely cursed team or having a really bad time in Edge of the Earth. You can still use Deny Existence to cancel either all the damage or all the horror, and you do have quite a lot of horror healing available on the Trumpet, so I think that this is going to be manageable if you're saddled with it, but you might prefer to upgrade his Trumpet by playing the challenge scenario rather than taking it at the outset of a campaign like a lot of people do with Daisy's Necronomicon. So that's Parallel Jim. There's an awful lot to digest here, so I'm probably going to gloss over a lot of potential this character has. First off, I love the concept of replenishing charges. I feel like there has got to be a really interesting Enchanted Blade level 3 thing that you can try out, as well as the level 3 Chthonian Stone to seal the non-skull symbols. You could honestly go all in on a sealing support kind of build with the Chthonian Stone and Seal of the 7th Sign, using Favor of the Moon to intentionally pull curses to replenish the 7th Sign. This isn't really my preferred playstyle, but I know it's a thing that larger groups like to try out. Among the cursed cards he can take, there's obviously a lot of plain good value things from the Innsmouth cycle, like Faustian Bargain, and Deep Knowledge for a really fast setup. I like the idea of having Blasphemous Covenant and Fey for like crushing tests. But there's also a bunch of things that are cursed that I kind of forget about having that trait. Like for instance, did you know that the Seeker Grizzly Totem is cursed? Add that onto a Blasphemous Covenant Fey Favor of the Moon test, and you're crushing that test. Completely forgetting about however many -2s you pull. Other often forgotten cursed trait cards are the Hungering Blade, Jessica Hyde, Blood Will Have Blood, and the Decorated Skulls. Interesting, yes. Good, who knows, but there's options there, and it's a pretty wide pool. But obviously the really big thing to highlight in the cursed cards is the cursed spell suite, which he gets full access to. And his new reaction ability, as I said earlier, really encourages getting the non-charge adding value from them. Since revealing a curse will already be replenishing them by 1, you have a lot more room to just take that extra damage, or take that extra clue, or take that move from each of those other cards. So I love this. I think this makes these cards feel a lot more approachable. And here's a question for the comments. Does Parallel Jim Culver give a fuck about Curse of Aeons? Please let me know. I have never understood fundamentally what this card is supposed to be, and even with this, I still don't. We could talk about some of the level 0 survivor cards as well, but I'll leave that as an exercise for the watcher as well. Normal Jim can already take level 0 survivor cards, so this isn't anything new that you probably haven't already tried out. The second big thing to discuss after his deck building is obviously the Spirit deck, which is composed of 9 level 0 to 2 ally assets from every class. This is a list of 62 cards currently, which ends up with an awful lot of permutations of 9. But first off, there's some cards that are just not going to work. Guard Dog is useless, and I don't know whether Tetsuo and Brother Xavier's damage and horror assigning works. I'm going to assume it doesn't for simplicity's sake. Jessica Hyde also sucks tremendously in the Spirit deck because she enters play and you immediately take 2 damage onto Jim. But that's a good segue into the sorts of cards that are good. And we'll start with cards that trigger when they enter play, like Jessica does. Medical Student, Art Student, Laboratory Assistant, Research Librarian, and Dr. Ellie Horowitz should all be reasonable choices. The Art Student, the Research Librarian, and Horowitz are riskier picks since they're more conditional or niche, or in Horowitz's cases might result in your Trumpet entering and leaving play really quickly, but otherwise I think they're all pretty nice little effects to have in there, especially if you're getting them for free. The next category is allies that give static boosts to your stats. Beat Cop, Dr. Milan, Granny Orn, Cat Burglar, an example of a static boost for each class. These are good for obvious reasons. Testing higher is good, and typically these allies cost a decent chunk of resources, and an ally slot to get the bonuses. In exchange for being a more temporary bonus, you get them for free. Fine. Finally, I want to point out cards that discard themselves in one way or another. Stray Cat, the Mysterious Raven, Hired Muscle, and Treasure Hunter all discard themselves from play at some point, which means you can get in an extra turn before the Beyond flips and you risk losing everyone else that's in play. So a nice balance of static boosts and self-discarding allies might prolong how long you have each given static boost in play. And as like a final throwaway comment for a really cool ally, Gregory Gry? Getting this guy into play for free and being able to pull as much as 9 resources off of him while doing tests is like an unprecedented amount of cash for a Mystic to have access to. Like, seriously. What the fuck? Alright, that's about as much as I have to say with Jim. I've already rambled on long enough here. I hope you're all excited for the next Parallel Investigator dropping on October 30th. Who do you think it's going to be? It could be Rex, could be Zoe, could be Jenny. I'm not sure. I don't know if they're only doing the Dunwich Investigators. I don't know what the plan is, but I'm hoping for Rex. I know a lot of people are hoping to see a Cursed Rex thing going on, so I think that'd be really cool myself. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.